That's right.
So guys, a little bit about Yoel. You had to suffer me in the past many times, so it's your first time meeting Yoel. You should know that he is a very experienced Jewish educator. He has a wide and a broad range of interests, such as classical philosophy, modern philosophy, Jewish studies, Middle East and European studies, archaeology, religious, a lot of interests, and he has a double BA from all over the world, basically, and an MA from the University of British Columbia, which is in Canada. It's not British and it's not in Columbia, right? And he wrote his thesis about theological transformation of Second Temple period Judaism, with the context of the Jewish-Roman wars of the Great Revolt and the Bar Kokhba Revolt, 66 to 135. And he is currently a colleague. Now we're touring Israel, all of Israel together. And he is such a, beyond all of the things that I've already mentioned, he's a lovely person, and I'm enjoying conversations with him. Very speaks languages, and he has an open mind for things, so we connected immediately. And Yoel, please tell us a little bit about yourself, of the things that I've not mentioned.
Hi, Netanel. That's great. No, thank you very much. That's a generous introduction. I think there is nothing else to add, except that thank you for having me, and to all of you for sharing this time together, and to being interested in the similar questions that we all have. So I'm looking forward to spending the next hour with you.
Right. And we'll try to save time for a Q&A at the end, as we always do. And today we're going to talk about humor in the Bible. Since the conversation is happening between two Jews, you know, humor is like unavoidable, inevitable. And I think that there are a few questions that we have to cover here. And when I say we, I mean you. I'll just bother you here and there as part of this conversation. What is humor? Do we have humor in the Hebrew Bible? Okay. And how we can, obviously, if there is, we'll think about examples for humor in the Bible. And moreover, how can we detect, how can we find what is humor and what is not humor in the Bible? So these are kind of fundamental questions that spring into my mind when I think about the question of humor in the Bible. And where would you like to start with it, Yoel?
Well, yeah, I think the way you laid it out is the same set of questions that brings us to research this topic. I would start by throwing a little bit of a basic lines of what is humor and how do we understand humor, and what is when we talk about the Bible, and also I know that we all share, I presume, the similar interest and are familiar with the Bible. Perhaps everybody has read it, and it's not clear if there is humor or not. There is no such a specific genre of humor. So if there is, if it was intended, there is I guess this is important to say, there is a big difference between saying that a book or a piece of literature, or even a section of a book was written humorously, and saying that the people that understood it humorously, and that the subsequent generations that have interpreted or read it have found the same passage funny or humorous. So there are many different levels of how we can address this question. And I guess the first thing to say is
so let me just a second. You're first of all, you're talking about the question of, was it interpreted humoristically versus was it intended to be written humoristically, right?
Right. I'm talking that these are two different things, and it's an open question whether both of them, like, do we find something funny? Maybe it wasn't intended as such, and then the other, that it was intended as funny, and other people just didn't get the joke, let's say. So I guess the first thing to say is that humor. Well, two things I would say. First of all, humor and laughter are not the same thing. Laughter is a very basic, very subconscious, automatic reflex that we share even with our closest relatives in the animal kingdom, with apes. And not only, we see that there is a study about animals and they laugh and they exhibit, especially apes, they show their teeth and they do very similar faces to humans when they laugh. And babies, when they're a little baby and you start scratching their feet or you're tickling and they start laughing, that doesn't mean that's humor. That just means it's ticklish and it's funny, and there is and
no
also,
doubt that I think that anyone who knows the names of the patriarchs in the Bible knows there is laughter in the Bible, right? We have 3 patriarchs. Third of them are named after laughter, right? We've got Abraham, Isaac, which is Yitzchak in Hebrew, and Yaakov, which is Jacob. So 1/3 of all patriarchs, third of all patriarchs of the Hebrew Bible are named after the laughter. So we know there is laughter, and there is a whole big discussion about that laughter, right? Why did you laugh? Why did she laugh? So the laughter is obviously there. Okay, so that's out of the question. I think we've at least settled one question. That's more than what I usually do. I usually add more questions instead of answers to my students, but at least laughter, we know they had to have laughter. It is written in the Bible, and it is like biologically impossible otherwise.
Very true. And the last thing in there, I would say that about laughter, that laughter is contagious. So you don't need to get the joke in order to laugh. You can be in a setting where you with a set of people that you don't understand at all one word of what they are saying, but if they are laughing, you're gonna automatically feel like you are laughing.
Right, there's laughter circles where people come together and laugh.
Very true. And the same.
I never did it. I think I laugh enough, without these circles. No. But I've seen it.
There's no need for that. And well, there is the same thing could be said about the other things. Like anger is also like transmitted to other people in as a
mob
response.
Mentality.
Yes, and even between two people, right? And the same for sadness and everything. We tend to imitate the face and reflect the faces of others. So
this is also said by the Bible, right? The Bible already says, "Kemaim hapanim lapanim, ken lev haadam laadam." Like exactly as water reflect the face, so does the heart of one reflects him. So it depends if you understand the verse, but maybe it means that.
They didn't have mirrors are a modern thing, right? So how did they have mirrors? It was on water, right? The letter on brass and everything. So that was the only way to see yourself, was to seeing yourself through the eyes of somebody else.
Right. So Proverbs 27:19 talks about the relationship between people and how they can affect one another. Again, as we said about the contagious laughter or the contagious anger. Okay.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I guess the other thing I would like to say before we jump into some more specific examples across the Bible that can illustrate these ideas of work, or how can we approach to understanding humor or finding it. I think that there is a very important distinction between amiable, like friendly humor, and aggressive humor. There are people who find funny, what is the purpose and the intention behind humor? Because in many cases, people laugh at other people or laugh at someone, it can be also one individual, and they think that's funny, but that is the intention behind, is to mock the other person, to ridicule the other person, to put down the other person. And let's say the bully, or the one that is doing the laughing, he thinks, oh, this is humor, this is funny, right? And that's a very different kind of humor, right? And many times that kind of humor is the precedent to a fist fight or a war or to killing someone, right? And I think we have those examples as well in the Bible. So there is the aggressive humor, and there is the friendly humor, right? And they are around the same words. So I think the key words, and here it's your field of expertise, Netanel. But we have the verbs in Hebrew with the same roots, and it's litzchok and it's letzachek, and the difference is a little vav, but it's a different family of verbs, because one is the pa'al form is just like laughing, like where itzchak the name comes from, and letzachek it's you're laughing at something or at someone, which is a different thing.
Yeah, that would be more transitive in nature,
yes.
if we to put it in grammatical terms. The context of letzachek indeed has various. This root, I don't know if we have the time for it, because I could finish the hour just talking about the various uses of this root. But this root has to do with dancing, with playing, with having sexual relations, with other things as well. So definitely a very prolific root.
Yeah, I think we might not have the time to go in, but many of the examples that we are going to touch on are dependent on that. So maybe you can have a later discussion and dig deep into the grammatics of these words. And another one that it should be also understood in this family of verbs is perhaps not the same, but it's very similar, and it's lesachek im, the letter sin, instead of tzadik, the letter sin. And that is also to play, or to and actually you mentioned Itzchak, and there is at least, you know this better than me, but at least once that I remember that the name Itzchak is written with samech, with with sin, sorry, with Itzchak in Isaiah, I think.
Right, ushvato leYitzchak.
Itzchak, nachon ze Isaiah?
And his oath to Isaac. The word Isaac there is written differently than the regular context.
But he's referring to our patriarch.
I don't know if I would ascribe it to something intentional or just to Second Temple period deterioration of some of the consonants. Remember that these consonants are these sibilant consonants are quite similar to begin with in many aspects.
Yeah. But regardless of the case, and I'm sure that this is a hard question to answer, but there is an etymological familiarity between the words.
No doubt. That is correct. These are right, all sibilants.
And actually we also cannot go into that, but just to throw it out there, the Akkadian language and the Sumerian and cuneiform, the same sound of schuk and itzchak is also there. So it's the family of language is there. So and in any case, I think that these words are important for the examples that we have in the Bible. And I think now that we mentioned the word lesachek in sin, right? There is a very interesting example about that transition between a friendly game and a violent event. And that is the story of the general of the children of Israel in the north, Abner, and Yoav, the general from the Judites, from David. And this is after the death of Shaul. And this is in 2 Samuel, second chapter.
The pool in Givon. Right.
Yes, and it says, let the Abner, they are sitting in the pool, and the Judites are on one side and the Israelites are on the other side, and Abner and Joab are the generals, but they say, we are not going to fight. They are, of course, they have quarrels and they can't find the peace together so all the tribes are together, especially after the death of Shaul. And then we have David here and Ishbosheth on the other side and the generals, and then they say, okay, let's have the children, the young ones, Narim, the young ones, let them play for us, let them fight.
All right, 2 Samuel 2:14 for those of you who are looking for the verse.
Yeah, and it says, I think I have it somewhere here, but Veyakumu Naharim Veisachku Lefaneinu. And it's the word lesachek. And it's like, in the story, when you follow up, is like they let them, the intention wasn't to kill each other, but they start fighting, apparently like wrestling, and then it develops 12 and 12, right? Always the number 12. And they start fighting in such a way that they pull out knives or sharp stones, not clear, and they kill each other. And it becomes, and this is a very interesting story, also in human psychology, of how from ancient times and until today, there is something in humans that enjoy violence. So in the Greco-Roman world, you have the gladiator games, and this is like a case of a gladiator games. Like everybody feels entertained. Yes,
it's very much so. It's, in a sense, you've got what's known as the intermediary fighters. So fighters representing each side. Basically, any sport today is a version of it. You know, you're a fan of a national team, soccer, or a football team, a baseball team. Baseball is not a sport, so maybe not. I'm just kidding. No,
you can get
basketball. No, I was just kidding. The reason I know it because there are so many Jewish athletes in baseball. I know it's not a sport. No, no. So basically, sport is just a sublimation of that. You have David and Goliath, which are representing the two sides. Okay, you've got Achilles and Hector. You've got Pericles. You've got this goes back to a standard in the ancient Near East of intermediary fighting. Again, maybe we know that the border between kind of nicely wrestling and crossing that border is very a thin line sometimes.
That's correct. Yeah, that's I think a good illustration to the nature of this human phenomena of humor, right? That something that starts as something funny can easily evolve into something no longer funny, right? It was just a joke, but they ended up fighting and even killing each other. So you mentioned sports, and that's the perfect example, right, of modern day gladiatorial games, like a form of Coliseum. And even the name Coliseum is used in some sports and American football. And in Canada, where I spent many years of my life, the religion is not the official religion. The state religion is not Christianity, but hockey.
Right, hockey.
And and if you haven't been to a hockey game, one thing that you experience.
Listen, you even have a person whose role is enforcer.
Yeah, even the name. But people get, if you're there just like not just observing the human reactions, you see that when there is a goal, people get excited, very, very much so, but not nearly as much than when there is a fight. The moment they start fighting, everybody goes on their feet and they starts cheering.
Right, but fighting, I know we have in the Bible. Let's steer it back to humor. Do we have humor in the Bible?
Well, the thing of the fighting here is that it was a joke before it was a fighting, right? So that's why I'm saying, like, we have this transition in the word. So another case of going back to its Chag, right? We have the Ishmael, right? It's story with Ishmael after its Chag is beginning to grow, that Sarah sees Ishmael mocking or laughing at Yitzchak, and the word is precisely the same verb of metzachek, right. The same verb, but in the transitive way. He's mocking, and it's not clear, or it seems like very harsh of Sarah to have told Abraham that you have to send this Agar with her son out away because she saw her joking, right? And it's not really, the word is not used there for joke, is a joke, but she was doing something else that Rashi says it was something really bad that can imply, as you mentioned, Rashi says the cardinal sins of with sexual tones and with violence and other things. The same.
Right. You don't need to go to medieval Jewish commentators. Just I want to give our audience the understanding of how commentators work. You've got Joseph, okay, who is accused by the wife of Potiphar of sexual harassment, to say the least. And the verb that she uses is exactly the verb letzachek, okay, in exactly that binyan of the PL binyan, the transitive or the intensive, depending on on the context of that verb that is mentioned in regards to Ishmael. Okay. So this is how commentary works based on biblical context.
So that's another clear example, right? Like you brought us this Hebrew servant, letzachek banu, and she accused him of trying to rape her. And it uses the word, and it's like the translators always are like, what was he doing? Of joking? It was what was it? Mocking? No, it's something.
It wasn't just making fun of him, right? It wasn't English making fun of him. Oh, Isaac, you cannot jump. No, the verb letzachek has a connotation of sexual harassment. Okay,
right.
Just
and another one is, and the other one is also the sin of the golden calf, which when Moses comes out.
The verse is Vayakumu letzachek, Vayeshev ha'am le'echol v'shato, Vayakumu letzachek, and the people sat to eat and drink, and they rose up to letzachek.
So whatever that means, it's not good.
I don't know, but it doesn't sound good. You can see based on the context of the other occurrences of the same verb in the same binyan.
Right. It was so bad that Moses came down, and when he saw that, he broke the tablets, and we know the rest of the story.
And it wasn't in warranty. He couldn't go to Apple to get new ones or anything.
New tablet, correct. So
he had to go all the way to God to get
all the way to the cloud, all the way to the cloud.
And even then, God said, "No, now you write it." Okay.
Very good. So you
see, I promised there will be humor, so at least we are giving it. Okay.
Yes. So I guess these examples then, what are, I think, serving so far is just to say that linguistically, I'm so sorry that my dog here in the background.
All right.
I think those examples, what they say is that linguistically speaking, when the interpreters, when they see the word and it's laughter, but the context is different. So the words are very, very challenging to put them one to one. You need to have the whole context, and then you see that you cannot distinguish humor just by going by the words when there is laughter or there is mockery. There is so much more, right? So, but there is more subtle ways of distinguishing humor. And one example could be seen in stories. One of them would be, and this can be reinforced by the archaeological and the history that is behind the relationship between Israel and its neighbors, which is the same that any nation and its neighbors, right? That there is always this sense of that being
rivalry between the neighboring nations.
Yes, and always telling jokes on each other. You go to any country and then you ask a joke, and you always hear that the neighbor is the butt of the joke. So I think that's a little bit of that psychology.
Except for America, because they don't know they have neighbors. I'm just kidding. I'm making fun of I love my American students, but it's all good.
But you have the Mexican jokes. You have
right. They think but they think Mexico is a state in America and Canada is a state in America. They don't. No, I'm just kidding.
The larger America.
No, I see, Clark. You're smiling. I know you. You know.
So one story that seems to be not clear, I would say not clear to us as humor, but maybe humorous to the readers that were closer to that context, is the story of Lot and his daughters and the children of her daughters. So when there is this story that we read it as a very serious story, and there is the incestuous relationship between his daughters and Lot when they leave Sodom, but that story being told and then being said that from here we have the nation of Moab and Ammon, and then we know from all of archaeology that the Israelites and the Israel tribes, and especially in the northern tribes, were at close rivalry with the Moabites, and we find many of these writings, and in both ways. So you see that there is maybe something hidden there that is not funny to us, but perhaps was intended to make fun of the neighbors up there, right? So stories like that, you can find a few. The same we were talking about in the book of Judges and Shoftim with the king Eglon, right? When the description there is a little bit of is exaggerated, and he's making a joke of how he was killed and he was like overly fat, and then when he would put his knife, they went with the whole thing went in, and maybe the to us it's not funny. It's hard to read it as a funny joke, but perhaps the ones who were closer to the context found the story a little bit a motive of joking at the neighbors. You see, we're making fun of their king or making fun of their. So
how about the humor that the Bible uses in the sense of mockery towards idol worshippers? How about Eliyahu in the mountain of Carmel?
I think that's one of the best examples. There are others, but I think in terms of Elijah, it's clearly described as a scene in which Elijah is having a joke, is having a laugh at the expense of the prophets of Baal, right? And then he is actually telling them, and the words, well, again, right, you can help us there. It's not clear it's a word that is not clear in Hebrew what the meaning of that word, but most interpretations, I think, have settled for something along the lines that maybe he's having a chat, or maybe he went to relieve himself. Maybe he's in the washroom, basically. He's in the toilet.
Right.
Right. So
maybe all of the above, basically.
Maybe or maybe he's asleep and you need to wake him up, right?
Right.
So
right. Perhaps he is asleep and he may wake up if you shout aloud.
Yes. So I think this is a case in which there was the ridicule of idolatry and idol worshiping. I think it was read with a mix of seriousness, but also laughter afterwards, laughing at the false gods, laughing at idolatry, not only in the story itself, but also for subsequent generations that read it, and they saw that it was a motive of. There is always like this thing that I think already mentioned before, a little transition between the something is humorous, and then also in the story of Elijah we see that it turns really violent. He ends up killing them all, right?
He starts with making fun of them, he ends up with slaughtering them.
Yes.
Next time someone is making a joke on my expense, I'll beware.
Yes, better we should know when to stop the joke.
Now I have to be very careful when talking about, other people, when talking about other nations. I might have gotten on the bad side of 350 million people a few minutes ago.
Right. Right. So yeah. So there is this. There are these sin scattered in the different books in the Tanakh, but I think that
Definitely, I never thought of it. It never occurred to me how close are contexts of almost obvious humor with mockery, with violence,
mhm.
and the brothers of Joseph is another excellent example.
Yes, yes, yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. So
Like
when the brothers are when Joseph is going on behalf of his father to seek for his brothers, okay, what do they do to him? They throw him into a pit. Guys, don't worry. That means they didn't want to kill him themselves at the moment, but it wasn't far from that. Okay.
yeah,
Nothing
yeah.
that happens to Joseph there is too far from killing him. And then they, after having thrown him into that pit, okay, they say, "Venir'eh ma yihiyu chalomotav." Now
Yes.
we'll
Yeah.
see what would be about his dreams, right?
Yeah. It's they are mocking him. And I don't think that is a passage in which the characters in the story I uh the character the characters in the story seem to are doing the mocking, but I don't imagine any generation of just reading that story as funny. It's always a tragedy. But it's funny in the sense, or not funny, sorry, it's a comedy in the sense that it has a happy ending. And I think I didn't say that at the beginning, but according to the ancient and more general definitions of what is a comedy versus a tragedy, is that a comedy has a happy ending. And it's a big question, like, well, which books are a tragedy, which books are a comedy? Even if the story is very sad, but at the end has a Hollywood kind of ending. And you can see the Jewish influence in Hollywood, because the movies in Hollywood are always a happy ending. You cannot see American movies with a sad ending, right? That's Irish movies or some other kind of movies. But American movies have this influence, right, of happy endings. And if there is, you know, when you're watching something, something is gonna happen, but this is gonna turn around. The person didn't really die. The hero didn't really die. There's always this something hopeful or good at the end, and I think the Bible is like that.
Indeed, Joseph does not die, right? He's got very, he gets to be the viceroy of Egypt, which is somewhat of a happy ending for that story.
Yeah.
Another very interesting example of humor, which is mockery, comes to mind with a famous description of idol worshippers by the prophets, right?
Yes.
When Isaiah is talking about the idol worshippers taking a piece of wood and using half of it to burn and for barbecuing and to heat the house, and using the other half to worship, to bow down to that. I cannot see how not to read it as humor, as mockery, as sarcasm.
Yeah. It's a pedagogical humor, right? He's trying to teach the lesson, like saying, isn't this incoherent to say that you can make your own God with the same material that you're using just to burn.
Isaiah 44, Isaiah 44, 16 and 17 for people.
Yeah, very good. Never thought of that one, but for sure, that's a good example of, I think that leads to another field of, or another set of questions or inquiries or approach, which would be, two fronts. One is the humor as a pedagogical or theological tool, and which you already opened with the previous example of Isaiah. And in the same vein, raises a question, does God, who created all of us, and all of us have humor, does God has a sense of humor? Does God laughs? Does God, and can we know that? Because and I think I find that a very interesting one, and I think the stories are there where it says that God laughs, and that it says a lot of times that he gets angry, that he's pleased, that he loves. So all of these emotions that we have, we see them in God. He has compassion, and all of these are there, but also laughter, and also, as we said before, laughter before anger. And I think a great example for that is in the book of Psalms, in the Psalms 2, the second chapter, when it says, why do the nations gather together against God and against his Messiah? And they say, we are going to cast away the yoke of the commandments from us, and they reject basically the Torah and the commandments of God. And it says that God will look at them from heaven, and then he will laugh at them and he will mock them, right? What is exactly the verse?
Yoshev b'shamayim yitzchak, Adonai yil'ag lamo.
Yilag lamo.
Right.
So, yeah, so these two words is chak, again, schok, right? But with the letter sin, which is more of jokingly a game. But then there's the more strong word is the one that comes after, ilag lamo. That word is more like he will mock them, or he will ridicule them for what they've done, right? Oh, that's great that you brought the whiteboard. and I think this is clearly or literally written that God first will laugh, because what else can he do, right? People are coming together and gathering and planning. Is like, you can imagine like the Tower of Babel, right? Like they are all like saying, this can be also, by the way, never thought about it, but now that it came up and to mind, you could see the story of the flood also in that sense, right? That after it tells us that the flood came and it covered the earth, and it covered all the mountains, right? And I'm not understanding this in a literal sense, but in a mythological sense, in a metaphorical sense. But it covered all the earth and all the mountains. And then the next passage is already saying that they all gathered together and they started building this tower. So in case in case there was another flood, they could, and they were scattered around the world, they could keep their own name. So to defy God. So it could be understood, that story against Psalm, the second chapter in the book of Psalms.
I want to bring the next point, and it is related to Poe's law. There is an internet law or a theorem, and that this law is named after, I think, a person by the name of Nathan Poe, and his law suggests that any without an emoji of a smiley face, basically without a winking smiley or other blatant display of humor, it is utterly possible for a parody to be mistaken as a genuine article. My point, this is a new formulation of, obviously, if it refers to smileys and emojis and stuff like that, it is related to internet culture. But my point is that we need to think of tools to decide which parts of the Bible should be read in any non-literal sense, be that humor or otherwise, but specifically in regards to humor, irony, sarcasm. How do we know in a written text to distinguish between something that should be taken literally? For instance, when we see that the book of, I'll give an example that is relevant for this period of the year, the 3 weeks between the 17th of Tammuz and the 9th of Av, when we are told about Nebuchadnezzar and Nebuzaradan coming to Jerusalem and killing people, we know that this is not written ironically. We know not to read it as a joke. We know not to read it as sarcasm. We know not to read it in any non-literal way. But certain other parts of the Bible, we definitely read in a non-literal way. So what
Yeah.
tools do we have except for emojis, which I haven't found in my Bible yet? I must say, I'm sure there will be an emoji version of the Bible. I have a collection of 100 Bibles. I don't yet have an emoji Bible. If anyone finds an emoji Bible, send it to me. Anyway, how do we, until we get an emoji Bible, how do we distinguish, how do we find, what criteria can we set to find text that is written humoristically in the Bible?
Yeah, no, that's an open question. I think the closest thing that we have is context. Context. That's the only thing in the story, but also the intra context, but also outer context can help. So we know that the same story is telling you something, but in there you know if the tone of the story where it's guiding you more or less. So I think when the stories obviously that you mentioned and the ones that are historical, well, no book of history has room for jokes, or many. Maybe in modern times every historian wants to start with a joke, especially Jewish historians will open up with a joke and then go into business. But really, books of history is not it's not a novel. It's not something. It's not fun literature. And that's why I have trouble with my daughter trying to read history. I get her always like, no, that's history. I don't want it. She likes to have something funny, right? So I get it, and it's fine. So I try to make my own version of history, so that is she finds something funny. So what I think that sometimes can be substitute or not substitute, but something that approaches more or less the emoji thing is the genre of wisdom, the wisdom genre. I think those books that are trying to teach you morality. And why do I say that? I think that there is a very strong correlation in terms of antagonism between morality and inhibition, or the free thinking, the free spirits. And this is something that is seen in the culture in the Bible, and we can talk about some examples that I thought about, but also is something that correlates in the neighboring cultures, especially in the Greco-Roman world. And we know that there is a lot of influence and back and forth between a certain period of the Bible in the Greco-Roman world, the Greco mainly, and then there is also the influence that we also know about in newer discoveries that come from the cultures that preceded the Bible, which is in Mesopotamia and Egypt. And we know about their practices, the stories. We know about the books that they have specifically about jokes and the jokesters. And in these books in Mesopotamia, you have books that are dedicated for jokes, and they are all what to the writers of the Bible would seem jokes that doesn't have room in the Bible, even if they existed as cultural practices. And I think we can talk about it, and I think we can see the footprint of this culture. But I think this irreverent jokes, which had to do with sexual jokes, with washroom jokes, with all the from the fartings to large penises to all these things, and they have tons of those jokes in Akkadian books, and you see that in the Bible. You just don't have that, right? So we
don't have the genre of humor represented in the Bible. Okay,
right.
But we don't have a specific genre for humor. I must say that indeed there were some philosophers, right? Alfred North Whitehead said that the absence of humor in the Bible is one of the unique things of literature. He might have, I don't know if he referred to the genre of humor, or maybe he didn't find any humor in the Bible, but we don't have comedy as a genre in the Bible. That's for sure.
Yeah. And I think although that is true, but what I argue, and I think it is possible and demonstrable to a certain level, to see that there is a reaction against this type of culture in the Bible. So even if it's not explicitly there, the moment that you have a reaction against these practices, it tells you that it existed in the context of the Bible, and therefore they did not, and whatever they wrote, and I imagine they could have written and made place, but whatever they did, it was burned down in many of the religious revolutions of Josiah, or at any period. It simply wasn't going to be part of the canon. But you see the reaction against this culture or subculture.
Exactly as you see the reaction, though, against everything the Bible says don't do, means people did it. Otherwise, why? Nobody says don't run a red light in the Bible, because there were no traffic lights. So the fact that the Bible says don't steal, don't kill, don't have relations with this, that, the other, all are obvious indications that people did exactly these things.
Right.
I want to open it a little bit for Q&A, and I saw that Anne was asking, what is the definition of humor? We didn't kind of define it so much, and then we'll open it for people. Anyone who wants to ask a question, just click on the raise hand button in the reactions, so I know that you want to ask a question, and I'll mediate it. So, do you have a quick definition of humor?
Yeah, I think a quick answer is that there is no answer. There is no one definition. There are many definitions. It's a whole field of theory of humor that is being developed in different fields, mainly psychology. And obviously this comes into literary studies, and then the main thing, or there are different aspects. There are, like, some people give you like 10 different ways of humor or things like that. I think the most important thing is to know that humor is an intrinsic component of human beings. From evolutionary perspective, it's been with us for ever, and there is no reason to doubt that the people, the context, the culture that produced the Bible had sense of humor around them. Maybe some of them were funny. We just never met them. We never met. I don't imagine Jeremiah as being funny personally.
Maybe not funny not funny in the sense of going to a party with him and celebrating. But definitely funny in the bitter sense of it, I would guess,
Yeah, different humor, in terms of tragedy. So it's really hard. The more you read a book, or you get closer to some of the prophets, you can sense sometimes a little bit of the character of the prophet. But we are very far removed in time, in culture, and I think the best way to approach the sense of humor would be following very closely, learning a lot with Netanel, and he will teach you Hebrew. And because the Bible in translation is a step removed from the culture, so jumping into the language and getting to the books in the language and feeling the language, I think that's when you begin to get a sense of it. But humor is an inalienable part of human beings. And humor can be funny and can be friendly, but can be also aggressive. And there is a thin line that transitions from one to the other. And it is very hard to determine when is one. It's really about, at the end of the line, the bottom line is that it really depends on the intention. The intention of the people doing the joke. If the intention is friendly, then it's always, but the intention is aggressive, you can see that is the complete other side of the coin.
Georgie.
Yeah, I have two questions I have posted it. One is the attitude of the church in Isaiah, where he mocks the people and at the same time mocks God also. So how can we think about that frame of reference? What he is trying to be superior in his argument, or is he ridiculing?
In what sense you mean mocking God?
Yeah, because he uses both. He uses the language to belittle the people and even belittle God, because saying that our God is more powerful than your God.
That's very good. I just one part that I missed. Which who were we talking about? Which example?
Isaiah, I didn't quite understand the question in the sense that.
Isaiah, Rabshakeh, he is
Oh, Rav Shakeh. Okay. You're talking about Rav Shakeh, which
yes,
is
yeah.
obviously in Isaiah, but also in Second Kings. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I think you mentioned Georgie. I think you mentioned two key words in what you were saying: ridicule and superiority, and those two are elements in the theories of humor. So a sense of superiority, also like jokes are oftentimes, or humor is designed in many cases to portray or to bully others, or to diminish others, to belittle others, and to stand yourself up high. So yeah, that was a good case in which you have like this messenger telling them, like, who is your God, who's going to save you. So it's similar to Goliath, and in that sense. So it is, I'm sure it was funny for the enemies, but for no one in the city found it funny, right? So it's aggressive humor, but that's a good example.
Yes, Don.
A couple of examples that I thought of was Jonah being delivered by a fish, and also the Dagon falling down on his face a couple times. I was also thinking of the out of leaving Egypt, and they say not enough graves in Egypt for us. And also Samuel, just before he kills the Amalek king, the guy thought that, I'm saved, kind of. And also Joseph letting interpreters talk between him and his brothers, and delivering, sending a servant out to retrieve the cup. And let's see, Nebuchadnezzar being turned into a beast.
Yes, for sure.
Those were all kind of things that I thought were humorous.
I would add even, it's a very long and respectable list. I think a very almost explicit one is Michal, the daughter of Shaul. Upon seeing David dancing, she says, "Oh, how respectable is the king of Israel today," which has been revealed in the eyes of the maidservants of his servants, like one of the empty ones, like one of the simpletons. So, she starts with, "Oh, how respectable is the king of Israel today." Obviously, I think it's almost explicit, or as explicit as you can get in a text.
Yeah. No, for sure. These are great examples. And some of them, I think that the readers throughout times would find it funny. I think the one about Nebuchadnezzar is it's a clear one, because when it's your turn to make fun of the enemies is when it's funny to you, right? Or to us, or to whoever is on the camp of Israel, let's say.
Right.
And so seeing the one who destroyed the temple in Jerusalem now is doing that is another form of going back to the theories of humor that we said, and this is also one of the explanations of why are Jews traditionally funny? Why are so many Jewish comedians traditionally, and why have Jews dominated, especially in the U.S., all the culture of comedy, and one of the answers to that is that humor can sometimes be a form of dealing with pain and suffering, and a way to finding a way to survive and to go ahead, and to, because life many times is harsh. And then when you make you find a funny side and you start making jokes, and then everything becomes a little bit more bearable, and that gives us certain strength or inner strength to keep on going and not let yourself be completely smashed. And I think the story in the Bible of in Daniel, I think, is an ancient example of that kind of thing, right?
Right. Before we move on to the next questions, guys, I want you to kind of write in the chat box where you're from, so Yoel can see that he is talking to the whole universe practically, or at least our small globe. Susanna, please.
This is definitely off topic, but is that a barong over Yoel's shoulder in his over his?
That's right. You're the first person. So that I guess you're from Ireland. And you're the first person who actually knows what it is, or when I say it's a barong, they know, because how do you spell it? And it's a complete different way, right?
Spelling in Irish people.
It should be a fada over the A, but I don't know how to put it in on my computer.
No, but people say, usually, like I'm talking about in English speaking countries, and it's usually not very intuitive to spell. Yeah, we love Irish culture and music, and I play guitar, and my wife plays
I
barong.
see session going on there. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that. And I keep thinking, and the funniest thing to me is the talking donkey. Bela. I mean,
right. Yes, obviously in the context of a prophet, right? You give the donkey a divine message. He sees the angel, and Biliam doesn't see. So obviously, yes, in the contrast that it creates between the two, again, as you said, the context enables us to see the humoristic view even better.
Yeah, and I think that's thank you very much, Susan, for bringing that story up, because one thing that is important to remember, and that is true then, is explicit in the Torah, and it's true now, is that the Torah, the Bible, is explicitly designed to be a pedagogical instrument to teach children, to teach people when they're children. And you shall repeat these words to your children when they get up, and when you're at the table, when you go out, when you go to bed. It's something that you shall repeat. And I have chosen Abraham, my friend, because I know he will teach his children after him. The emphasis is always teaching children. Now, that story about the donkey, when you are teaching it to children, and they hear like a donkey is talking, it's almost inevitable that children will laugh at that point, right? So I think that's a great example, right, of something pedagogical.
Anne?
Yeah, in a way, I feel that humor is not really something that God would use in a way. I mean, he might, because I would not think that God himself would make light of something heavy. I believe that God can laugh and can be joyful, but being joyful is something else than humor. And when I think, for example, about the enormous amount of Yiddish jokes, which are well known, they always have a crying eye and a laughing eye, and it's making light of something serious or even something very tragic or heavy. And that can be one way, like you said just a little while ago, one way to deal with it, to deal with pain or with trouble or whatever else comes against you. And what I do agree with is that humor very often is used in a derogative way. And I dare say God is never derogative. He is clear about what is not right in his eyes, but he will not make fun or be derogative about those people. Because I mean, if we are even not allowed to curse fallen angels, like Michael even said, well, God should chide you when he met the Prince of Persia. He did not curse that entity. So we can understand something as humorous, but I believe that even those images that we might find funny are not put there by accident. They are put there in a context of the people who lived in that time or in that culture, and are chosen also to illustrate a certain message, or to give a handle on what God wants to convey, but not in a derogative way.
Totally, yeah. No, I agree. I think that the aim in terms of being pedagogical is that there is a lesson to be learned at the end, which is always something moral, something spiritually good. It's always about differentiating good from evil, or right from wrong. That's the story of the Bible, basically, from Genesis all the way. And through the different styles or genres of the Bible, we see the same, whether it's a narrative, or whether there is in Psalms, or whether there is in history. There is always this underlying message of right from wrong, and it happens between the individual, and between Israel and other nations, and between most of the time between Israel itself. Like some members of Israel choosing to follow God and to do the right thing, and others choosing to walk away from it. So that we have these stories always, right? But in telling the stories, and for the sake of the higher message, or the end message, there are parts in that story that convey laughter. And for instance, the previous example of the donkey, that part is funny, but then if we follow the story, we see that it's not funny, and we end up in a very we go through the blessings of Bilam, and then we go into the story of Pinchas, and the message is about the fear of God and everything else that evolves. But that just shows us that the human experience has all these many different faces, and they are all part of what we are.
Okay. I want to do two things. First of all, I want to ask everybody who may open their mics so we can give a hand, open their cameras so we can give a hand to Yoel and say thank you very much for coming and talking with us about humor in the Bible and doing this great conversation. So thank you very much, Yoel.
Thank you. Thank you.
It has been a great pleasure. Okay. And second,
thank you.
Yeah, I want to.
Thank you so much.
I want to thank you, Yoel.
Good experience.
I want to talk a little bit about future guests that we're going to have here. Dates are still questionable because of the 9th of Av fast and other factors. We're going to have Rabbi Tovia Singer. We're going to have Nehemiah Gordon. If we're going to have a friend of mine who is an Arab Christian living in Israel. And we may have more guests. And so it was a pleasure having everybody on board, and a great pleasure having you, Yoel, join us. And thank you very much for coming.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure for me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Take care. All the best.
All the best.